Hey, Cassidy. Hey. Hello. Hey, Ray. Hey. Hello. All right. Let me type this thing in. Study group. No readings. Perfect. All right. And then make that pin the comment. All right. Cool. So study group, no readings. Cool. All right, guys, it's time to get into our study group time. So it's our conversations with God study group. So that's what we're doing. How are y'all doing? How are y'all doing today? Just curious. I'm good. I'm good. I'm looking forward to the weekend. I'm still working tomorrow, so I still have that to do. But then after that, I can have a break. So, hello. All right, guys. All right, so it's our study group time, everybody. So this is for study group. So we do the secret study group here. No personal questions or readings, because that was in the last hour. So if you have a question pertaining to the material in the book, or if you have a question pertaining to just spiritual topics, or topical questions, I'm totally open to that. Personal questions that was for the live reading event last hour, so just FYI with that. So hello, Miss Jenny, hello. Hey, Daz. All right, so let's get started here. So I'm gonna read a rough couple of days, but getting there. How are you? I'm good. Yeah, I can imagine you've had a rough couple of days. I bet. You're gonna need a vacation after all that. Just I think you're gonna need a vacation. So, all right. So I'm gonna read from the book, stop, make commentary, discuss some things, and then we can carry on. I mean, you can put your questions. What did it do, Boo? And we're gonna come back here. So go ahead and put your questions in the comments section below for the study group time. Okay. All right. So where did we leave off here? How long does it take? And I think that's what we're at. Is like, how long does it take for things to manifest? And I had mentioned before, like, it just depends because, for some, typically it's 30 to 90 days is what's been my experience. So it can happen tomorrow, it can happen 10 years from now, but it'll happen like, okay, well, like y'all are just definitely like stretching things there. So there is no time for the universe and there is no size for the universe. It is as easy to manifest $1 as it is to manifest $1 million. It is the same process, and the only reason why one may come faster and the other may take longer is because you thought that $1 million was a lot of money and that $1 was not very much. Not only that, I think I agree with that, because you can definitely manifest a lot of money, or you can manifest a little bit of money or no money at all if you're stuck in a state of lack. But your attachment to what money means is also a huge factor, and I don't think that they go into that enough. In other words, if you grew up with a mindset, like for example, I grew up in the hood, so I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of poverty. So for me, the idea of thinking about $100 or $1,000 or $1 million seemed like an incredible amount of money. And whenever I thought of that amount, it would seem like something huge and impossible in some ways. And so that's why some people struggle with finances and with their money and how much they're trying to manifest, because if they have a lot of, if they have a charge against it, in other words, if you have a lot of resistance, and that's a word we will use here, resistance, meaning that you have an entire life and mindset built around money and the availability of money and resources because of your conditioned life and what you came from, it's going to be a lot harder for you to manifest a large amount of money or to draw to you more money. Doesn't mean that you can't do it, because I've definitely been able to achieve a level of success and financial stability in my life that I've never had before. But it's going to take more work. It's going to take more effort, just because of your background, because of where you're coming from, because of what you are associating with money, because of your emotional connection to money. And some people don't have the best relationship with money. And even if you didn't come from poverty, but you have a lot of debt, or you have a lot of stress and anxiety because it feels like you're working just to pay bills, but you're not really living, or you're just like, accumulating more debt, that's only going to create more resistance against it. And it's going to make you amplify and affirm the feelings of lack, the feelings of no money, the feelings of there's no resources, not enough, etc. Some people have an easier time with little things, and so we sometimes say start with something small like a cup of coffee. Make it your intention to attract a cup of coffee today. What if people don't like cup of coffees? What if people don't like coffees? And I wouldn't put it in the day as being like the here's the thing, whenever people like read The Secret or learn about The Secret, they have this belief or this idea that if I just wish for something or if I just try to attract this, one day is a good enough amount of time. And typically when you haven't really believed in this very much, or you haven't really done a lot of work with alignment, with manifestation, the idea that you're simply going to have an idea or thought in your head and it's going to show up is ridiculous. It doesn't work that way. What you have to do is you have to really understand the mechanisms, and you have to really understand what you feel a connection to, because it's going to be much more effective and much easier for you to attract something you feel a connection to versus something you have zero connection to. In other words, if someone doesn't like coffee, there's no connection there. I love coffee, so I would like to have a cup of coffee that somebody else make or somebody else bought me, but the likelihood of that happening where I'm at, because I'm away from people, is not likely, because I don't really interact with people where I'm at. But you have to kind of be a bit realistic or practical with this, and not go into the state of magical. If you approach it from a practical and realistic perspective, you actually will summon to you more magical related experiences, more experiences that are kind of awe-inspiring and catch you off guard, and experiences you wouldn't have expected. If you're expecting miracle coffee, or you're expecting something, then that's a different story. And like I said, one day is not enough, because people will inevitably try it in that day and nothing happens, and they just like, see, doesn't work. And they don't understand the process. And even the people who wrote this book don't fully understand the process either. In some instances, I feel like they're talking out of their ass with some of what they're explaining, because it feels like they haven't experienced or practiced this enough themselves. They just had it, and then they became a part of this book. That's what I think. I was like, oh, you haven't had experience with this. So starting with something small. So he created a picture of a feather. So let's see. He decided to start. Okay, here we go. Starting with something small. Small is an easy way to experience the law of attraction with your own eyes. Let me share a story with you of a young man who did exactly that. He watched The Secret, and he decided to start with something small. He created a picture of a feather in his mind, and he made sure this feather was unique. He created particular markings on the feather so he would know without any doubt that if he saw this feather, it had come to him through his intentional use of the law of attraction. 2 days later, not in the same day like they suggest, right? Because they're setting you up for success, right? Not. They're setting you up for failure by telling you it's only going to take 1 day, but then they're giving you a story where it took 2 days. So again, every single situation is different. 2 days later, he was about to walk into a high-rise building on a street in New York City. He said he did not know why, but he just happened to look down. There at his feet, at the entrance to a high-rise building in New York City, was the feather. Not just any feather, but the exact feather he had imagined. It was identical to the picture he had created in his mind, with all of its unique markings. In that moment, he knew without a shred of doubt that this was the law of attraction working in all its glory. He realized his amazing ability and power to attract something to himself through the power of his mind. With total faith, he has now moved into creating much bigger things. People are amazed at how I line up parking spaces. I've done this right from when I first understood The Secret. I would visualize a parking space exactly where I wanted it, and 95% of the time it would be there for me, and I would just pull straight in. 5% of the time I'd have to wait just a minute or two, and the person would pull out and I'd pull in. I do that all the time. Now you might understand why a person who says I always get parking spaces gets them, or why a person who says I am really lucky, I win things all the time, wins one thing after another all the time. These people expect it. Begin to line up your reading, Ferny. These people expect it. Begin to expect great things, and as you do, you will create your life in advance. You can use the law of attraction to create your whole life in advance, right down to the next thing you are doing today. Prentice Mulford, a teacher whose writings share so many insights into the law of attraction and how to use it, demonstrates how important it is to think your day in advance. When you say to yourself, I am going to have a pleasant visit or a pleasant journey, you are literally sending elements and forces ahead of your body that will arrange things to make your visit or journey pleasant. When before the visit or the journey or the shopping trip, you are in a bad humor or fearful or apprehensive of something unpleasant, you are sending unseen agencies ahead of you which will make some kind of unpleasantness. Our thoughts, or in other words, our state of mind, is ever at work, fixing up things good or bad in advance. Prentice Mufford wrote those words in the 1870s. What a pioneer. You can see clearly how important it is to think in advance every event in every day. You will no doubt have experienced the opposite of thinking your day in advance, and one of the repercussions is that is having to rush and hurry. If you are rushing or hurrying, know that those thoughts and actions are based in fear of being late, and you are fixing up bad things ahead of you. As you continue to rush, you will attract one bad thing after another into your path. In addition to that, the law of attraction is fixing up more future circumstances that will cause you to rush and hurry. You must stop and move yourself off that frequency. Take a few moments and shift yourself if you don't want to summon bad things to you. Many people, particularly in Western societies, chase time and complain that they don't have enough time. Well, as someone says, that they don't have enough time, so it must be by the law of attraction. If you have been chasing your tail with thoughts of not having enough time, from now on declare emphatically, I have more than enough time, and change your life. You can also turn waiting into a powerful time to create your future life. Next time you are in a situation where you are waiting, seize that time and imagine having all the things you want. You can do this anywhere, anytime. Turn every life situation into a positive one. Make it a daily habit to determine every event in your life in advance through your thoughts. Set the universal forces ahead of you in everything you do and everywhere you go by thinking the way you want it to go in advance. Then you are creating your life intentionally. And then the lessons of this chapter are, like Aladdin's genie, the law of attraction grants our every command. The creative process helps you create what you want in 3 simple steps. Ask, believe, and receive. Ask the universe for what you want is your Asking the universe for what you want is your opportunity to get clear about what you want. As you get clear in your mind, you have asked. Believing involves acting, speaking, and thinking as though you have already received what you asked for. When you admit the frequency of having received it, the law of attraction moves people, events, and circumstances for you to receive. Receiving involves feeling the way you will feel once your desire has manifested. Feeling good now puts you on the frequency of what you want. To lose weight, don't focus on losing weight. Instead, focus on your perfect weight. Feel the feelings of your perfect weight and you will summon it to you. It takes no time for the universe to manifest what you want. It is as easy to manifest $1 as it is to manifest $1 million. Starting with something small like a cup of coffee or parking spaces is an easy way to experience the law of attraction in action. Powerfully intend to attract something small. As you experience the power you have to attract, you will move on to create much bigger things. Create your day in advance by thinking the way you want it to go, and you will create your life intentionally. All right, so let me stop there because that's a good stopping point, and we can talk about some stuff before I get off here. Okay, so here's what I would recommend instead, because they have this whole like sit there, spend hours in your day that you don't have to dream of a life that doesn't exist yet, and then don't follow through with anything. Like it's almost like they're just focusing on like the idea of dreaming it up, but not necessarily doing anything to achieve it or doing anything that will help you to start to move in that direction. Here's what I would recommend. If you wanna practice attracting things and seeing how this works so you can start to understand your process, what I would recommend is coming up, make a list. On the list, I want you to write 10 things down on this list. And it's just, call it a to-do list. My to-do list, or Ferny said this is my to-do list. So to-do list, 10 things down. Those 10 things have to be a combination of significant things, significant events or situations, and then situations that are smaller or smaller desires. In other words, if, let's say I'm trying to attract a house with specific types of features, and I'm actually in the process of looking for a house, or I'm open to buying a house, then that would be a time for me to put that on the list. If I'm living with my parents, or I'm living, not really being able to cover the costs of my apartment or a space, I'm not really working, then I would highly recommend that you work on those things first before you decide to attract a house. So what I would say is you can still put on a house, and like if your dream is to have your own home, you can do that, but I would put that on the bottom of the list. So I put them closer to the bottom. And then on the top of the list, write 5 things you have to do, or 5 things you need to work on before you can get to that house. Not because you're going to have to do all those things, but because you need to get practical and realistic with yourself and turn this desire into something that's reachable, something that is relatable, something that you can actually feel like you have a chance of achieving. And so if you put like one big thing on there, which is I want a house, or I want my own home, then add 5 things on there that are going to align with that. And then you need to start working on the easiest thing on that list of 5. So if you want to do it the full list, 10 items on that list, 2 or 3 might be bigger things, but the rest should be smaller things. Like, I want to get an earlier dentist appointment, or I want to get new tires for this bill from the electric company to get smaller, or for it to be much more affordable, or whatever. So come up with some smaller things on that list, and then have a few bigger things. But if you have bigger things on the list, make sure you include actionable steps, or things steps you can take that you will have to take in order to get that bigger thing on the list. Just because you need to see a list in front of you of things that you are capable of achieving. And if you have it only like, I want a perfect husband, I want a perfect, house, I want all this money, like you're delusional, and you need to get realistic, because you're never going to manifest none of that unless you like really luck out. So it's highly unlikely that will happen. So you need to get realistic. If you get realistic, you're likely to actually achieve it. And so come up with that list, start working on the easiest things on the list, one at a time, because what will start to happen is as you do something on that list, add another thing to that list that is easy, or that is going to be an actionable step of some sort. But every time you do something on the list, cross it out, add something else on the list, and keep doing that. But try to make it a habit to go off of this list or use this list, because what will tend to happen is if these things are things you are intending to follow through with, and you want to achieve, and you're willing to step up and actually follow through with those with the things that are going to be attached to that. In other words, if I want a house, but I'm not willing to call a bank up to see what I can qualify for, if I'm not willing to go and look at houses and properties and do walkthroughs, if I'm not willing to have to pay for the bills or the taxes or anything of those things, then don't expect it to come, because the likelihood of you achieving it is going to be highly low. It's just too much of a reach for you. So you need to be willing to follow through with the actionable steps. So I wanted a house. I called a bank, didn't get approved for anything, called another one, they approved me for a certain amount. I'm like, okay, cool, that'll work for me. And then I started to look at all the things I needed to work on or do to be able to get that to happen. So when you buy a house, it's a lot of work. Y'all think it's easy? It's not. It's a lot of work. First, you have to get an inspection done, which is very nerve-wracking. Then you have to talk to the person who's going to be funding the loan on a regular basis, almost daily, for whatever crap they need as far as documentation and paperwork and whatever. Well, this was my experience. Then you have to submit. Then you have to give a check if you want to put. If you want to what's it called? If you want to put in an offer for a house, you also have to get a good faith check or something like that, where it's basically saying, hey, this is a good faith thing. Like basically, you're paying like $1,000, or that's traditionally what it is, $1,000 or $5,000, whatever. But it's a good faith thing, and then the the seller's going to cash it. But there's all these things that go along with it. So you probably need to look into everything that's going to be required in order for you to get your own home, just so that you start to get realistic about the process. And that way you start to follow through or do anything and everything possible that is connected to that experience for you. If you're just like, I'm going to sit on this couch, I'm not going to change my finances, I'm not going to try to save, I'm not going to apply for credit or for a loan, I'm just going to sit here and wish for a house. Again, the likelihood of that happening is very low, and you're probably going to feel like a fool and you're wasting time. So you need to do the same thing if you want a relationship. Do the same thing if you want a specific type of career or job. Do the same thing. Make that list and then start working those things through, and you will get closer and closer to it. And then all of a sudden, once you start to get into a habit and it becomes a norm for you, stuff starts showing up in your life. Stuff starts happening that you did not even try to do, but it was on your list. And things will get knocked out for you, and it's going to start to feel like the universe is starting to participate and partner up with you to create this desire. But you need to show that you're serious. You need to essentially offer some sort of sacrifice to the universe. I'm willing to achieve this. I'm willing to get this. Here's what I'm willing to offer, which is the sacrifice. This is a personal sacrifice. So I'm willing to make myself uncomfortable to call a mortgage company to see if I can get a loan. I don't want to call anybody. I don't want to apply, but I'm going to do it. And so that's how you have to approach it. Okay. Let's go through here and let's see what you guys are asking me about. Those are all personal questions. So let me go over here. Earnest, thank you. Yes, earnest money. God, I forgot the term. Yeah, earnest money, girl. Earnest money. I did get the necessary degree to be the instructional coach first. See? Which of you then got the job? I knew I manifested it. Those little mantras are powerful. Things always work out for me. That's been life-changing for me. See, I don't, and you can say that. I don't like to say things always work out for me because I feel it doesn't resonate for me. I always tell myself, Ferny, you easily deal with everything, so nothing is really that hard for you to deal with. So whether it's a big thing or a small thing, it's a happy thing or a negative thing, you got this. Like you can do anything, Ferny. Like you can handle anything. You can get through anything, and you're usually going to have a better experience than most people, and you usually manifest or summon to you more blessings than the average person. So you're good and you can get through anything. That's how I tell myself, because that to me have more resonance for me. The idea of everything always works out for me feels a little bit on the delusional side. Just for me, I'm not saying that that's not something you should use. It just feels a little bit on the delusional side sometimes, and that's why I always like, whatever happens, whatever comes, I'll get through it. It'll be fine. Because back in the day, whenever something would happen that would affect us, here's an example of this. Back in the day, this was when I was 16 or 17, right? Yeah, this was like around 17 or 18. When I was 17 or 18. So long time ago. Back in the day, when we were still poor, my mom on SSI, she has this ability, and she was also on Houston's like Section 8 program. So she was on that program. I mean, we were literally in all of that. And we had been living in like an apartment for almost 10 years. It was a 1-bedroom, and my sister had moved in with us at that time. So it was me, my mom, and my sister. And my mom and my sister would sleep in the bedroom. My mom was a huge snorer. My sister would go crazy because my mom would snore so much. And I slept in the living room, and that was our living arrangement. That's what was normal for us. And then it was time for change because we were getting older, and I needed privacy, and my sister wanted privacy. And so my mom had heard about the Section 8 program with Houston and went ahead and applied to it. And she got approved. And so they were going to subsidize some of her rent because she qualified because of her disability and all that other stuff. So we went ahead and found an apartment in the hood. It was a newer complex. For us, it was like luxury, because if you have a gate around your apartment complex, if you have windows that don't have aluminum foil on them, if you have a gate that is automatic that opens when you have to drive through, if you need a code to get in, if you have, bedroom for every person who wants a bedroom, like that's luxury when you're coming from the hood. So for us, this 3-bedroom apartment that had connections for a washer and dryer, that was luxury for us. We had a balcony, luxury for us. Security, or that was luxury for us. So we found an apartment and it was a 3-bedroom. My mom applied for it, and she was approved, and we began the process of moving. And I remember I had a little, like, I had my, what was it? Which car was it? It was the Neon. I had a Neon back then, my blue Neon, and I had to make like 10 trips back and forth from like the apartment, that 1-bedroom apartment that we lived at, over to this complex, because most of our stuff didn't fit. We didn't have the money to buy a U-Haul or anything like that, or even get a truck. So I basically had to like bring everything back and forth, and then we were able to get someone with the truck to bring over a couple of heavy pieces of furniture, and that was it. But I mean, we lived in the hood. Well, on the day that we had moved in, we had already moved in, everything was done. I went over to the office to submit the check, or to give a check or something, and something about Section 8 that people don't realize is when you're on Section 8, especially for Houston, they don't always send the check on the date it's due. They'll send it. It's just it's not going to come on the check that is due, on the day that is due. So the person who's like the property owner, or the renter, not the renter, but the landlord. I'm trying to think of these words. The landlord. They hadn't gotten the check, but they put a letter underneath the door of the new apartment. We had just moved in. My sister and I, we had never had carpet like that, or not really. So we were making like carpet angels. Like we were on the carpet making angels because it was so plush and fresh, and we just weren't used to that. So that was for us luxury. They had put a note at the door, the apartment complex, the property management company, that said that they hadn't received the check and that they were beginning eviction proceedings. And this was like the first day we had just moved in, and we already paid the check and everything, right? And so I that's what I went to the office for, not to submit the check, but to actually find out what the hell was going on. And so as soon as I saw that notice, like my heart dropped, and I felt like all of this potential, like a better life, a step in the right direction. Like I felt like everything was going to be like swept from under us. And the apartment we moved out of had already been leased to a new people, so we weren't going to be able to move back. So it's like we were essentially going to be homeless or not have a place if we couldn't stay there. And I was freaking out. And I'm the one that handled everything. My sister didn't handle any of that stuff. My mom didn't know what was going on half the time, or understand what was going on half the time. So I'm the one that had to handle this. And this was when I was like 17 or 18. So I went to the property management office with this notice, and I was like, hi Mary, like we received this in the mail, and I don't understand, what this means or whatever. And I mean, and I was expecting her to say, y'all have to move out, y'all can't live here. And that's what I was expecting, just based on the notice or whatever. And she says, oh yeah, she says, that's just standard. She says, Section 8 doesn't ever send their checks on time. And so just because of policy, we always have to, send those to the apartments that the checks haven't come in yet. So that's pretty normal. So don't worry, you might get those in the future. It's a Section 8 thing. It's not like it's y'all are good. Until we get the check, y'all are good. And I was like, okay. And then like I was trying to explain to her, like I thought we were gonna have to move out and everything. I started getting watery eyed, and I was like freaking out because this is like a home. Like I thought we were gonna be kicked out of our home, and this was like an upgrade to us, a significant upgrade from what we came from. So it was heartbreaking, but it was like, okay. So in my life, and I remember that moment that I felt that way. It was the anxiety and the pain and the stress of it and the heartbreak. It was heartbreaking, but it was also like my heart was beating really fast because I just was like in that panic mode. Like, what? Oh my God, what do we do? What do we do? And so that's how I felt. So now, whenever something happens or comes up, I try to remember what I felt in that moment and how I have handled almost every single experience since then. And every single time a challenging experience has come up for me, I will find a way to work it out, and it usually is easier than I expected. But if I'm willing to accept whatever is coming at me, if I'm willing to accept and I'm willing to put my energy and willing to, somebody's over here. Oh, no, everybody. Guys, if y'all are tuning in, trying to get a reading, it's a study group time. So this is only the study group, no personal readings. It says it right there at the bottom. See right here where it says study group, no readings. Sorry guys, so that wasn't the last hour. Okay, back to my story. So every single time I have found myself in a situation like that where I need to deal with something, and I need to deal with the challenge or the circumstance at hand, I've always been able to do it, and it always works out really well, and I'm always able to get past it and move on. And so now I know that I have this ability because I've done it over and over and over again in my life several times. So now whenever I am encountering a challenging or a difficult situation in my life, immediately I take myself back to that moment, that stress and anxiety, and automatically we always want to have, like, you can feel it. You can feel it in the pit of your stomach whenever you're faced with something new. But then you have to remember who you are. You have to remember who you are, what you're capable of, and what has happened in the past. And then say, okay, doesn't matter. Whatever happens, whatever is going on, I will get through it, or it'll work itself out. And I will figure it out, and it'll be easier than I expected. And it may even actually be a good thing that this is happening, because it gives me a chance to deal with this now instead of having to deal with this in the future, if this is something that I would have to deal with in the future. So I always try to like just embrace, accept, and then I do whatever I can to deal with it. So that's my way of handling stuff. So, questions. So I've known some people focus on mantras, but I've also seen mind movies lately, kind of like a video version of a vision board. What are your thoughts to that? Yeah, so here, let's go. I'm gonna try something new for the study groups. Oh, no, she better don't. No, she better don't not, let's try this again. Try this again. Probably running around putting on her lipstick or her hair. Come on. Come on, Mama. You can do it. You can do it. I'm gonna let it hang there, so I'm gonna wait for you. Okay, so the mind movie thing. I experimented with mind movies in the early stages. I'm still expecting you to accept the invitation to come on video, so just FYI, I ain't dropping that. But I experimented with mind movies back in the day, and they were interesting, but I didn't connect with it. So, in other words, you know, I grew up in the hood, so for me, that's okay. Oh, so I grew up in the hood, and for me, having a wonderful experience next to a blue ocean was not a real thing. You know, I grew up in the hood, and we went to Galveston, and the water in Galveston is cochina, which means dirty. It looks like it's just mud water. And so whenever I think of being at a beach and being somewhere amazing and beautiful or whatever, I had nothing to reach for. I had no concept of what that experience was like, because I hadn't had that experience. And so what I had to do was and if I see this beautiful white woman walking by the pool and like, look, I'm gorgeous, my body's perfect, I'm near the beautiful ocean, I'm not going to connect with that. I don't feel any connection to that whatsoever. Now, if you get a gay guy, or if you get me in the scene, I will relate to that better, because I can connect to the person having that experience. I can't connect to this woman who looks perfect on the outside, but I don't feel a connection to her. Same thing with, you know, guys and their physiques. If you know, it's like, think of a perfect body, and you've got a guy who's got like a six-pack, and I can't relate to that. I have to see myself in that situation, or I have to see myself or a version of myself. So what I would say is, instead of using mind movies as far as like putting in clips of things you don't relate to and you have no experience of, it needs to be clips of either you having an incredible experience from a vacation, or you having an incredible experience with your family, or you being at a time in your life where you were the healthiest, or you were strong, or you did look a certain way. It has to be you. Because if you use people as stand-ins, it's going to be harder to make that connection in your head. But if it's you, it's going to feel like a memory, and all you're doing is reactivating the memory and bringing the energy from the memory and upgrading the memory and the energy from the memory. In other words, when I'm going to use my example, when I was trying to get comfortable with the idea and get used to the idea and embrace and manifest the possibility of me living here in New Mexico, my dream was, I'm going to have my desk in front of the window and there's the mountains, but I had never had those experiences, so I couldn't relate to that. It wasn't until I went here on vacation, I forced myself to come here on vacation, even though I was scared, just so that I could have an experience here, and I knew what to relate to, and that was going to serve me. So when I went back to Houston, that's what I used, is the memory of that experience, and I brought it up in me, and I brought it up through visuals and through reminders, and I relived that memory, and then I upgraded it and expanded it into this dream version of it as well. So I meshed the two together, but it made it real enough for me, and I could connect to that, I could relate to that. So that's how I used it. Let's see. Questions here. Sam is like, I wish I could teach this to my kids. It is very empowering and exactly how I live. It is hard to explain this to people because after I learned how to do this and I saw how incredibly well things were going for me, and then on top of that, it was obvious something was changing in my life. I even had an ex-boyfriend reach out to me, and this was someone who dumped me, and he dumped me because I don't think he thought I was going to get anywhere with my life, where I was going to be able to do well enough for myself. But after many years or whatever, I just got over it. But he had been following me on, I think it's Instagram or on one of the platforms, and he randomly messaged me and was like, "Hey, how are you doing? Like, your life looks pretty incredible. Did you win the lottery?" And he specifically asked me if I had won the lottery because my life had changed so much. And I had changed so much. And I was like, nope. I said, everything that I mentioned to you that I would do when we were together, I did. And then some. So everything that I told you I wanted to do or wanted to create or manifest or whatever, this was when I was just starting to practice law of attraction and manifestation. So people think you're crazy when you try to tell them that you can manifest things or attract things to yourself. And that's okay, because if you actually are good at it and if you're able to do it, you don't have to tell people. After a while, they're going to notice something's changing with you or something's happening. And then they're going to ask you, what the hell are you doing? What's happened in your life that your life is in a completely different place than where it was before? So I've had that happen for me several times, for people who knew me back in the day or knew me when I wasn't doing well or when I was struggling, has seen how much of my life has changed. And they're like, what are you doing? Or what happened? Or did you, and again, someone asked, did you win the lottery, the X? And I was like, no, I ain't won the lottery, but not that I would tell you if I did. I ain't trying to open up that opportunity for you. But people would notice when something's changed. So one, because the internet's dropping out over here. I don't know what that's about. So he had suggested, I was like, there are some books that I'm going to recommend that will help you understand this, because you're going to have to do some homework. You can't just listen to me say this or that and then think that's going to be enough. You need to really understand this. And he was like, yeah, I'm open to whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. So I recommended a few books to him. One of the books being Conversations with God by Neale Donald Walsch, because part of the issue that I felt he was struggling with is that he hadn't accepted himself or learned how to love himself. And instead he was in conflict with himself. And the only way you're going to be able to come to peace with yourself is if you actually start to connect with the divinity within you and start to see yourself in a completely different way. And one of the best ways to do that is just simply to embrace a connection with a spiritual version of God. And you can say all kinds of things about God, but spiritual version of God, which is basically in a heightened version of ourselves, a magnified, a larger, grander version of ourselves. So in order for you to accept yourself, you have to get to the space and the mental place of, or the energy of God, and then look at yourself again. Because at that point, you'll see yourself in only love. So he needed to get to a place of love within himself and in peace within himself instead of being in conflict. So I recommended this book. I was like, hey, here's one book that I would recommend. It's written by a guy who had built himself up, built up a life for himself, and then he lost it all. He also was homeless for several years in Houston and Dallas, and then he was able to turn it around. And when he turned it around, he realized it still wasn't enough. He needed to do more for himself, where he needed to be happier. And then he started to go on this journey. So the book is called Conversations with God by Neale Donald Walsch, which has been one of our study group books in the past. And so he immediately was like, oh, well, I'm not religious, so I don't care for anything that has to do with religion or God. I'm like, this isn't a religious book. This is a spiritual book. What I have done that has helped me to shift and transform is to embrace my spiritual nature and to practice everything that I've learned in my core and on a regular basis. But you need to come to peace within yourself, and you're not at peace with yourself. Yeah, that's fine. I just don't want any religious books. And I'm like, this is not, listen to the words in my mouth. This is not a religious book. This is a book about a guy, and this is the process and the journey that he went on. And so you can say he's having a conversation with himself if that makes you feel better. But you need to read this because this is going to be important for your own process. He was like, yeah, and I was like trying to explain it to him. He was like, this is just too much. It's just too much. This is just too much for me. Can we take a break with the conversation? I was like, dude, don't just acknowledge what I've done and ask me how to do it and then think that you can do the same thing, and then you ain't even willing to even try or entertain what I'm suggesting to you. And you're not listening to what I'm saying. And so it was irritating because it was like, dude, you're really not wanting to do the work. You're a waste of my time. This conversation is a waste of my energy. There are people who actually will use what I'm giving them and will run with it, and they will do amazing things with that. You're just wasting my time. So I don't need to have a conversation with you again because you're in your own little world and you're wasting my time. So after that, I just never entertained a conversation with them. And again, several times after that, I've been approached like, hey, how are you doing? And I just was like, oh, I'm fine, thanks for asking. That's it. In the conversation, I don't have the energy to waste my time. And so you have to take this more seriously. And there are a lot of people who want to see those changes in their lives. They want to have what you have. They want to do what you can do, but they don't want to put the work into it. They don't even want to put the understanding of what has happened into it. And that's a necessity. That's a part of the process. And so if you want to make change, you have to put the work into it. If you're not willing to put the work into it, keep bitching and griping, but it ain't never going to happen, and that's what you deserve. So if you're willing to put the work into it, you can see the change. But that's the only way it's going to happen is if you're willing to follow through. And most people don't. That is one thing that I've found and encountered over and over again in dealing with people who want to have their own business or people who want to create a specific career path or whatnot. They are not willing to wholeheartedly devote themselves to that process or to the path, and they only half-ass it and think that that's going to be enough to budge something. It isn't. You have to literally sacrifice yourself to that cause, to that thing, and follow through as much as you can. And if you're just half-assing it, or you're just putting, I'm just going to do a little bit and then hope for the best. No, it's not enough, because there's not enough real raw intention and drive there to really charge the manifestation, to really align you with the power of God. God, could you imagine if God created the universe half-assedly? I mean, we would be walking around with only half an ass. So it wouldn't really work for all of us. So you got to do it fully, or just don't do it at all, you know? Yeah, and and when I first learned of the secret, and this, again, the secret's a starting point. Think of the secret as like an appetizer. There's a lot more to this than that, but it's a starting point. I always tell people to watch the film. Some people can start watching the film, and within the first 10 minutes, they get bored, or they just don't want to pay attention, and they just stop watching it. And then years later, they come back, and they're like, oh my God, what was wrong with me? Why didn't I watch this? Excuse me, why didn't I watch this? And I'm like, because you weren't ready. You just weren't ready to commit yourself to the path. That's why. So The Secret has a lot of good information, but it isn't the be-all, know-all. And with any newbie who comes into the scene, or anybody that you want to help or that you want to offer guidance like this to, it's a good starting point, but I would also prep them for the snapbacks and the issues they're going to run into as they start to practice this stuff as well. Okay. It is a cheesy film. It is a cheesy film. I mean, even the book is cheesy. I mean, reading it is like, just have a perfect thought and everything will work out. I'm like, but what the hell is a perfect thought? Like, who has perfect thoughts? Are you kidding me? I was like, are you not from the planet that we're from? It's ridiculous. Oh, thank you, Cassidy. I appreciate that. Oh, thank you. Y'all are so sweet. Real Estate by Bethany. You know, you are not ignorance. You're asking questions. Ignorant people don't ask questions. Ignorant people just accept what is an obvious out for them, which means whatever isn't obvious to them, they'll just stick with that. They don't ever want to dig deeper. You're not being ignorant at all. It's The Secret, and even though that's the book that we're reading for the study group, the live is topical, so people can ask like topics about different spiritual matters, manifestation, law of attraction, etc. So that's what that's about. Okay. Okay. All right, guys. I love you all. I think I'm out of time because I gotta get to getting. So, all right. Love you all. I will see y'all next. Oh. Speaking of this, before I let you go, next Wednesday I'm getting together with Shannon Ogg, and so we're actually gonna during the live for the study group. We're not going to do the book next Wednesday for the live. We're not going to do the study group. We're going to do a kind of like a therapy session with meditation. And that's what it's going to be like. And I'm going to be kind of helping him work through some stuff, and in the process, let it be an example to y'all so that y'all can use that for yourselves if you want to. But that's going to be where we're going with that. And he's going to help me as well because I'm open to working with him and he's open to working with me. But this was specifically for his health and helping him work through some stuff that is affecting his health. And so that's what we're going to be working on. So hopefully y'all will get something out of that. Okay. All right, loves. I love y'all. Talk to y'all